obviously not the best. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And how about a bowl of cereal? My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film Gemini Man, Gemini Man, want it, Gemini Man, Will Smith in my head, yeah. Oh, you don't like Rob Zombie?
I'm more of a Taurus bro.
Actually, it's White Zombie. Technically, Devil Man was White Zombie. You're a Taurus bro? Yeah, we talked about Taurus bros last time. Well, actually, I want to find out which kind of bro, dude, guy, fella, gentleman our guest is. Ladies and gentlemen, we have in the studio with us my good friend, producer at MTV and comedian extraordinaire, Mr. Will Tempfer.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
You've been on the show a decent amount at this point.
Well, there was the Christmas special, and then there was 10 Cloverfield Lane, which is funny because I'm only doing Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
That's the only time you will be invited back.
Yes, please.
You and I have never been in the room together, right?
Not for one of these, no.
But I did. Did I Skype in for 10 Cloverfield?
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, but you weren't here.
Right, okay.
So you've actually never breathed the same air while talking about a film before.
How did you not know we were actually the same person?
Oh, my God!
Whoa.
It's all coming together. Well, geez, Will, thank you for being here and being Shahir's clone.
Oh, yeah. Hey, no worries. Topical.
Will, because you and I have never met, and maybe you've done this on previous episodes, but I'm curious. You and I have never quite crossed paths, but I've known you as the film guy, as a person who really loves movies.
That's true.
What are the kinds of movies you love? Like, what are the things that kind of get you talking?
Man, that's hard because I really like to just see everything as much as I can.
Or what have you seen recently that really spoke to you?
That really spoke to me. I keep a list.
Oh, wow.
He does keep a list.
Have you got a letterbox account?
It's funny because Will...
No,
Will actually literally... He's not joking when he says this, he does see everything.
Right.
If I've been late to a film for a little bit, I can always ask Will I know he's seen it, but what he initially thinks. He's already seen it before me.
Yes, because I like that in New York you can go, when they say a movie's released Friday, usually you got Thursday evening.
Yep.
That's when you can start. And then I'm also on 5 different email lists for screenings.
Yep.
Right.
Some of those are just promotional, a week or two early. Some of those are actual test screenings,
right?
Which I have to lie and say I don't work in the industry so that I can go see them.
Was one of those actually your other claim to fame, which was sitting behind Shia LaBeouf for 5 or 6 hours?
I did. I went to the Shia LaBeouf All My Movies, and
wow! Were you on the live stream?
I was on the live stream, so I got there at towards the end, when he was going from his newest films to his oldest films, and so I got there right around when Transformers 1 was showing at 2 p.m. I got in line, and you're moving kind of fast at first, so you think this is going well, but then once you get inside because it started outside, once you get inside and it was going closer, you realize that it's moving fast because people are bailing.
Right.
Because you kind of go in thinking that people go in, they see a movie, and they leave. No one kicks you out. You can stay as long as you want. So... I got there at 2 p.m. At 10 p.m., I made it inside 8 hours later for A Guide to Recognizing Your Saints. This was 2005, Shia LaBeouf. And so since I got in at 10 p.m. and I got there halfway through the movie, I'm like, all right, I'm staying for another one, which the next one was, I believe, The Greatest Game Ever Played.
Okay.
The golf one. And then I was like, it's middle of the night. It's almost 2 a.m. at this point. I'm like, I'm going to stay also for iRobot.
Oh, so they were playing in reverse chronology.
Yes, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so...
Did you make it to Battle of Shaker Heights?
I left during Battle Shaker Heights at around 8 a.m.
Okay.
But he was directly behind Shia LaBeouf. Yeah. So you're on the stream all over the damn thing.
So I was able to get in the row right behind him, just in towards the end of the wall. But then after A Guide to Recognize Your Saints ended, a lot of people left, and I was able to just move to the aisle directly behind him and stayed there.
Did you tap him on the shoulder every time he did something cool on screen?
Oh yeah, that was
good
great.
job, Shia.
Good, great work.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people did, and he was really like, "Oh, thank you so much." It was like, "Oh, he's a very kind man." And then, a lot of times too, he would just get up and go to the back and fall asleep, and then so I was the one that was in frame.
You were in the live stream.
Yeah. So it was around there where I'm like, I gotta go.
So people were mistaking you for Shia LaBeouf for a little bit. They were like, "Whoa, he looks a little different."
Yeah. Someone made a Twitter blue shirt guide fan.
Really?
Yeah, it had 20 followers, and then it died like 2 hours after.
Sure.
But yeah.
He seems to be on this precipice of like, I'm not actually sure if he's insane or the industry's insane, and he's just like the normal guy in the crazy industry or not. Like sometimes some of the things he does like seems like the ordinary person reacting to the craziness of the actual industry he's in, and then sometimes it's the opposite.
I think the media has been unfair to Shia LaBeouf. I feel like he's a really genuine, cool guy. Just from like some of the recent interviews I saw.
Yeah.
This all started with what was like a film that really moved me, The Peanut Butter Falcon.
Right.
I absolutely loved that movie.
We missed that this year. I'm hoping to catch up on that.
It's it was
He's got that and Honey Boy coming out, right?
Yeah, Honey Boy is going to be amazing.
I think we are obsessed with as a society with literally putting a person or a thing in the good category or the bad category. And Shia LaBeouf, I'm sure, falls somewhere in the middle. I mean, here's the deal. He's an eccentric actor. And in this day and age, if you are either of those things, you are going to be scrutinized to high hell. So like, I don't know. I never really dug like the Shia hate, even when he freaked out or like whatever. Like, he's grown up in a weird situation, and he's made, I think, probably the best of it to the most of my knowledge. So like, I don't know. He's somewhere in the middle, I imagine.
Chaotic good.
He's chaotic good.
Yeah.
If he was my bard in a D&D 5e campaign, he would be chaotic good. Yeah.
All right. So Peanut Butter Falcon moved you. Anything else on the list that kind of really spoke to Will?
I put The Art of Self-Defense up in my top of the year so far as well. I went in that movie kind of thinking it existed in this world.
Yeah.
And then realized
it gets a bit crazy at the end, right?
And it gets crazy, but I think it set up the rules of where it is, so I didn't feel like I was watching a movie that was just so far removed from like, they just don't get it. I was like, oh, this is a different world.
Yeah.
And they've explained it pretty well.
Yeah.
And I get it and I like it. It was
I like that director, Riley Stearns, a lot.
Yeah.
I liked his last film, Faults, quite a lot. Which he was married. Riley Stearns was married to Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
I caught
it all
that.
comes back.
Yeah.
Oh, I caught that on Vudu or like a month
left
ago.
him for his, I think she left him for Ewan McGregor. Yeah.
Oh yeah. When they
I mean,
Fargo together.
That's got to burn. But
I mean, Ewan McGregor's a beautiful man.
I mean, yeah.
I'd leave Chevalier for Ewan McGregor, to be honest with you.
I'll be sure to have her listen to this timestamp. Where are we at? Oh, okay. I'll just put texting.
She would too, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you both have the mutual pact. But what it turns out is actually Ewan McGregor gaslight both of you.
Yeah.
And it's a parent trap.
Yeah,
Just like when you two showed up here at the studio today.
Yeah.
It would be Ewan McGregor parent trapping you two back together so that you realize just how much you love each other.
We love each other a lot.
Yeah. See?
Ewan.
What a nice guy.
What
Ewan
a nice
McGregor.
guy. See, there's someone who falls in the good category.
Oh, does he?
Well, I mean, prequels aside. Although he was pretty good in the prequels.
No, he left his wife. I don't know. Anyway.
Did he? Oh, well,
Yeah,
maybe he's
for-
in the middle. Maybe I'm even righter than I thought I was.
His daughter like trashed him on.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah,
Is he a
yeah.
scumbag and I didn't know it?
The jury's
We
still
don't know.
out.
Middle ground.
The jury's still out.
We don't know.
I love it.
All right, so but this week we're going to be taking on Ang Lee's film Gemini Man, and the real look. To be fair with you, to be completely 100% honest with you, I wasn't keen to see this movie except for
Until
one.
you met Will Smith in person.
Well, I mean, he is seeing him in person is like 240 frames.
Oh my God,
You know,
that's
it's
so
like-
many extra
There's
frames.
so many frames to him in real life. No, but the real reason I wanted to do this film was because of the 120 frames per second. Now, I'm speaking to a very specific audience in the listening population, though, because this film only played in 14 theaters in 120 frames. Now, this film comes with 3 distinct acronyms, and they are 120 frames per second,
Yes.
4K,
Yep.
and 3D. And there is no, I think there's one theater in China that plays it in the whole shebang, which is all 3 of those things. Everyone else, there's 14 theaters in the United States which play it in 120 frames, 3D, 2K, which is
Yes.
not the full shebang.
Yep.
So I was really curious to do that because we, if you can go back to our previous episode, one of our previous episodes, we did an episode with the post-production panel, post-production team behind Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, which was Ang Lee's previous film that was shot at 120 frames.
Yeah, you were the host of that.
I was the host of that at the HBO Theater, I believe it was. And it was a really fascinating discussion. We didn't actually get into a review of that film. And I don't think, I think around the time a lot of people people didn't want to talk about the film itself, but the technology.
Sure.
Did either of you see Billy Lynn's Long Time Half Walk?
Nope.
I never did.
Never did.
I went and saw you talk about the post-production of it.
Yep, I did see it. The film definitely has its fans, and I think it's a pretty bold statement to use this really unwieldy, massive throughput technology,
Sure.
digital technology that is like new age, cutting edge technology for what is ostensibly a pretty low key, minor, drama about a soldier suffering from PTSD.
Right.
Now, I think the theory that Ang Lee kind of had around that, and this will get into our conversation around 120 frames per second, is that the look of 120 frames per second is so hyper real that it might give you the sensation that someone suffering PTSD might have of trying to figure out the world and seeing too much information. That's maybe one of the theories as to why he chose 120 frames, or he thought that Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk would make a good test vehicle.
Did he
for him.
say that, or was that a...
That's one of the arguments that's going. I mean, you could probably look it up to kind
Sure.
of see that. That's one of the arguments that's going around about why he chose to do that film in 120 frames per second. But all three of us in this room, before we even get into the movie, did see this film at 120 frames per second. And again,
3D.
And 3D and in 2K because we live in the United States and not Beijing. Now, the episode that we have with the Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk post-production team is really fascinating. It's very technical about like the ramifications of trying to shoot this much data.
Yeah. So nerds, go eat that up. Nom 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 nom.
But I'm curious as to both of you guys. This was your first experience with 120 frames per second. There's only a couple other films that have been shot in high frame rate, and that is obviously the Hobbit trilogy,
Which was 48?
48 frames per second. There was a documentary called Aquarelle, which came out recently, which was about, which is just a visual documentary that was shot in 96 frames per second. This is your first time experiencing 120 frames per second. Were you interested in seeing that, or were you kind of, and what did that factor have to do for you guys?
Yeah, I was certainly curious. I don't know. I already kind of was thinking I wouldn't really enjoy it. I don't know. There's just that idea. I mean, that it's like a fun thing, but I don't know how it will help the film or hurt the film. But yeah, I was very curious to see, especially since I missed out on Billy, and The Hobbit. So yeah, I was deeply curious.
I too was curious, but I mean, I have a lot of stigmas going into this thing too. Like The Hobbit in 48, I think was atrocious.
Right.
Like I can't, watching that, and the memory of watching that and the headache I got from watching that was just so, I was like, either the projector I saw it in was severely busted, or why do this to your eyes? And then on top of that, I am one of the people that if I'm visiting a friend's parents' house or some place where I am not in charge of the television and they're watching TV and they have like the motion blur, like the fake more frame, like that sort of look, motion smoothing, I am the person that will spend 20 minutes in the remote trying to prove to them that they're watching TV wrong when they've watched it so long they don't care. I'm that person.
Right.
So I hate the fake version of this. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I wonder if I'll like the real version. Right. So I definitely was 100% curious, especially after your talk about Billy Lynn, Shahir. And this being the first time that I'd seen it, I kind of wish, was Billy Lynn also 3D?
Yes, it was.
I would.
And I believe I actually saw that in 120 4K 3D.
Right. I would be really interested to see Gemini Man or other stuff in high frame rate, not 3D.
Right.
3D throws things off for me in general. Not that I can't see it. It's just I generally don't enjoy it. And not to mention, no, let me rephrase. I don't enjoy it for 5 minutes and then I forget it's there.
Right.
So it starts you off on the bad foot, or starts me off on the bad foot.
Well, so the interrelationship between 120 frames and 3D is kind of critical to this whole equation, because the reason people are doing things at 120 frames per second is to mitigate the choppiness of 3D. So there's a thing with 3D, which is basically you're getting an image per eye, right?
Yes.
So a left image and a right image, and they're being merged together by your brain. But at 24 frames per second, if the camera swings around, you'll get a sort of stuttering effect, which is what you traditionally get in film anyway. In 3D, the idea is that is unacceptable and can break your brain a little bit, which is why people get headaches during 3D. So the idea with 120 frames per second is to shoot as much clarity and detail as possible. So if you notice, one of the things with Gemini Man, when we all saw it, is that when the camera would swing around, there'd be none of that stuttering effect. The camera would move left to right completely smoothly, and there would be no interference of image because of the 3D, because of the way the 3D works.
But also because we're so used to 24 frames a second for film, and I don't have the better word to use for this because it's not true, but that movement, that level of sort of, I weirdly like non-blurry clarity comes across as cheap.
Right.
And because we equate it with something more like 2997 or 30 or even 60, depending on like television stuff or however that's shot and lit, etc. But you had something.
Well, I was gonna say, because soap operas are shot in 60 and they like look cheap.
Yeah.
Well, they can be shot at 2997, but the difference is that it's a television image, which means that it's interlaced. So it's firing the top.
That 60i.
Yeah. So it's firing the top half of the image and then the bottom half of the image, and you sort of get this doubling of. So 2997 at interlaced feels like 60.
Yeah.
But you get this sort of like clarity.
No, actually, I
of,
believe they are though. They are shot at 60 though. The soap operas, they're shot at a different frame rate.
Are you talking about like new now HD ones, or are you talking back in the day?
No, like currently. I on the walk over here, I looked it up because I was like, I'm pretty sure, and so I looked it up, and it's like, yeah, they're currently shot at 60 frames per second.
I wonder if they do that to keep a certain.
I don't. Not to. I don't believe they're shot at 60 because that's too much data to go through for a soap opera. But I would say it's shot at 2997 interlaced. Is the difference, which is if you do the math, is kind of like 60.
Hey, listeners, we're not going to check it during this episode. Email us in onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or onlymoviepod on Twitter and let us know who's right.
Wait, where's the intern?
Where's he? Oh, Zoe's sleeping on the beast bag, so
Zoe,
we can't
check this
really.
out for us.
Zoe does
But
not
at
give
any
a
rate,
shit.
we all kind of tend to associate the higher frame rate look, the interlaced look, with feeling slightly cheaper
And I
than
think
the 24 frame look.
I think I know why. Because it's not cheaper. It's way more expensive.
For sure.
I think it has to do with the amateurish feel of, even on a smooth camera move, even you see in 120 frames the microscopic camera shakes. I don't know how else to put it. Like there's little bits of movement, or like even though it is smooth, it also comes across as a little bit more jittery because like the rack up or the ease in, ease out, I don't know how to put it in camera terms, of like the actual move from stop to start to stop, like isn't even or doesn't feel even every time.
Are you talking about at 120 or
at 120?
Okay.
And also, because you're shooting at 120 frames, you need a shit ton of light.
Yeah.
And then you're pumping the image full of light, which instantly makes it feel flatter, even though you're going to play with contrast, you're going to play with saturation, etc., and clamping and whatnot. But that also in my brain says soap opera. Like it's very like, this is light, like. So those are the things that really get me when I look at it.
I was gonna say lighting as well, just because you can tell like it looks unnatural in night scenes, like when they have to set up lights for. I feel like there was whenever they were on the dock in the evening, or like when he was
the
outside,
boat.
Well,
that was all day for night with a replacement with a sky replacement.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Oh. Makes sense if it is. Because just a lot of times it just sort of looks.
Was it not here?
I would say no because the amount of the amount of visual effects, the throughput for visual effects for a film like this is so huge that if you could just shoot that at night with enough light, that's going to be a bitter equation. You might be right, but I
don't think you could shoot that at like.
Well, like, have you ever seen a Sony A7 shoot camera? Like shoot footage now? It's like you can shoot in moonlight. If you can, this is a $138 million film, so you could shoot.
I'd be interested. I thought even when I was looking at those scenes, like I was like, oh, I mean, again, maybe it's because I'm not used to seeing the frame rate.
Yeah.
But in my brain, I was like, sky replacement. I was just like, I just sort of read it out.
Well, here's the thing that I thought was very interesting about the conversation that we had with with the post-production team, and also the conversations that Ang Lee has been having. And I think one of the things he talked about, because Ang Lee is he's an interesting filmmaker to be taking the helm for this kind of thing. Like the director of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Brokeback Mountain, The Ice Storm, like taking Woodstock. It's unusual for this person to be spearheading technology as we know it, but it all started, I believe, around around the life of Pi, or actually for him, what he describes as the turning point for him was the Hulk. When he did the Hulk, and he was basically doing full CGI character.
Yeah.
He was playing in this world of digital technology, and I think the thing that he described and the post-production team described is that the language of shooting on film and shooting at 24 frames per second is embedded in us, in our culture at such a degree that to him it seems a little boring now. We know the lessons of how to shoot on film. We know the lessons of how to make things look that a certain way for film. What he was interested in is now we're starting to use digital technology. Instead of trying to make digital technology look like this older technology film, he says we should try to learn the language of digital. Like what do digital films look and feel like, and how can we tell stories with the digital camera that is inherently unique to what a digital camera is? And I think that's where a lot of this sort of stems from. And his argument, he's a very humble man. He talks very sort of openly about the fact that he doesn't necessarily think that he is the right person to kind of be spearheading this, and he doesn't necessarily think that he's doing the greatest work with this, but he hopes that basically some of the steps that he takes can be adopted by other filmmakers, and certainly James Cameron has also been spearheading this whole movement. He's the one who persuaded Peter Jackson to kind of take on 48 frames. He's going to be shooting the remaining Avatar films.
Way to go, James!
In I think 60 frames or something like that. So I think I don't like the look. I straight up don't it doesn't do anything for me. Although I will admit, it's basically the highest amount of clarity you can have with an image on screen. It's like the most crystal clear image you can get.
Yeah.
But that's not, to me, what film is not clarity, but it's more... film is about the interplay between what you see and what you don't see.
It's style.
Yeah, so it's that sort of balance of how you paint with light.
Style begets feeling. That's the thing that I will say in Gemini Man, and in the experience of watching it in 120, and I think Will, I mentioned this to you right when we were leaving, was there were certain shots where it was the correct distance. Say if I was looking at characters, but I was where my seat was and the screen was where the screen was, and maybe a little bit sort of physically past that, right? With the 3D and the 120, if the sizes matched up with that geometry that I just set up, my brain snapped and was like, Will Smith is here. Right. I didn't have that conscious thought, but that's what it felt like. And that's amazing. The problem is that a film is cut together with multiple different shots from multiple different, not only focal lengths, but actually distances and things like that. So when you have that moment and cut away to something else that feels completely alien, and going back through all of those things, it actually, for me, was a little bit more jarring than I thought it. The clarity in that point was actually a detriment to me paying attention to what the hell was going on. And it was weird. You never, at least, look, I don't know, maybe filmmakers do want to do this, but you never want the technical side of your film to be pulling you out of your film. I would imagine that's something people don't shoot for unless it's an actual tech demo, which, again, I don't want, Gemini Man in itself, to me, first thoughts, felt like a highly expensive tech demo. And it felt a little bit, and this is not a detriment all the way, but it felt like a video game cutscene throughout the entire thing. And that's, again, because I'm used to seeing frame rates like that in games, in gaming. Mm-hmm. Not to mention junior young Will Smith's face still doesn't quite break that uncanny valley. There's lots of it that's very impressive, and I love watching the steps forward in this either making someone youthful or just creating CG characters, because they're gonna get there. It's just not quite there yet. I don't know.
Well, how about you, Will? What did you think? Just initial impressions of either watching it at 120 frames or just the film itself.
Yeah, and another addition to your what it thought it looked like when it first started, especially with the train and then Budapest, it felt like a travel video,
right.
Videos highlighting "Welcome to the sunny, beautiful Budapest," and some the establishing shots just felt very commercial, I think that you were saying, it's jarring when it takes you from one aspect of of a shot that it works for to another shot that it doesn't work for, that makes it look like that. And I was blown away by by the use of it for some shots, but confused by the others. But narratively, script wise, it was a little paint by numbers, and there was some dialogue that just could have really just helped some scenes, some key moments, and especially in the beginning with I just don't know how young Will Smith's character Junior existed for 23 years and no one knew about him. Like, we saw his house, we saw his room,
Nobody asked Clive Owen, like, who's the mama?
Well, and right, like, you know what? That guy looks a lot like another guy that works here. But he's your son.
Yeah.
That's anyways.
Yeah.
He was clearly he was at those training facilities. Or just like how many people saw him, but somehow Will Smith did not know.
Right.
They were all in the Gemini program, but Will Smith had been out for so long, for 23 years or whatever. I don't know. I'm making excuses.
But they
for
still
the
had similar bosses because Clive Owen was with that woman who was
the boss.
right.
They knew, but they were secret. And then Clive Owen blackmails the government lady.
Anyways, so strange. And then the last scene, as soon as it ended, lights go up, and I'm like, how did Junior get into college without an identity? He just got his identity.
Yeah, he just like turned up with a passport and social security number.
Spoiler alert.
You need that to get into
I'm
college.
so sorry.
No. Well, here's something I'm going to say right off the bat here. And this is, I think, a weakness of the film. The only spoiler for this film is there are no spoilers. The trailer, if you've seen the trailer, and I know, Shio, you didn't watch the trailer beforehand.
Because of the trip that I went on, I had to watch it many times.
Well, look who cheated at his own game.
Yeah.
But if you've seen the trailer, you know exactly everything. The trailer hides nothing from you, and if you've seen a movie before, you know where it's going to go. So I don't think and another thing that bugged me plot wise, and I'll come back to this later, is every interesting possibility where this story could have gone, it just picks it up and drops it and moves on. And therefore, I don't feel like speaking anything about this film is something that will affect your enjoyment of it one iota. So, on that note, I'm going to talk about the very end of the film, where Junior is shown on a college campus, and Henry, older Will Smith's character, and what was Mary Elizabeth? What was her name? What was her character's name?
Her character's name was Danny.
Common college student, Danny.
Yeah.
Zaroweski. They're at the college campus, and they're meeting Junior. Junior's walking with some friends, holding books, so it looks like he's in college. And then Will Smith gifts him his own passport and IDs so he can then be legitimate, even though, as Will has pointed out, he's already very much in college.
Right.
He's got friends. They know his name.
He's been there for...
Do you think he's just one of those guys that just turns up to classes? You know, like people do turn up on campus.
He
and
audited the classes?
he's
just,
auditing.
He's just auditing the classes?
And they're still calling him Junior, and then finally he'll be like, okay, but my real name is...
Yeah.
Bob.
And the really interesting thing here, too, is this is the cheapest feeling shots of the entire movie on this sunny campus where you really see the facial mapping a little bit fall apart. Man, I can't imagine, side note, watching this in 4K and seeing this facial mapping, because I feel like the 2K even hides some of the rough edges, but you could even see in some of the grading a little bit of the halo. But this scene feels like a scene out of Fuller House. And it ends 5 or 6 times where there's that note no, see you later, Pops, or whatever. Not if I see you first. Ha ha ha. And you expect credits to roll, but then they keep walking and they're like, so what are you going to eat for lunch today? It's I don't know, but you better not follow me. Ha ha ha. And then it does that 5 or 6 times. And you're like, man, when's it done? I don't know. It was strange.
Now that you've spoiled the whole film, can you tell us what Gemini Man is about?
Oh, let me tell you. The IMDb description of Gemini Man is A, highly accurate, and B, will spoil everything for you right up top. Here we go. An over-the-hill hitman faces off against a younger clone of himself.
That's it. One line pitch. So the interesting thing about how this film came about is that famously the pitch for this film and the actual original script for this film was sold in 1997 in New Jersey, of all places, by writer Darren Lemke. And this script, I even read about this script many, many years ago because it floated around Hollywood for, this entire time as one of these great unmade films. People were talking about this, like forever as this amazing script that couldn't get made. And there were so many tests of this film. So many directors have come and gone and attached themselves to this film. Curtis Hanson, Joe Carnahan.
What year was this again? I'm so sorry.
1997.
Man, it feels like a 1997
it's a
script.
1997 film. Yeah. And like every big leading man in Hollywood was attached to this film at some stage. Harrison Ford, Chris O'Donnell for some reason, Mel Gibson, John Voight, Nicolas Cage, Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, Clint Eastwood, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, and Sean Connery.
Thank God Arnold only did The Sixth Day for his clone movie. I actually like The Sixth Day. It's trash, but it's my trash.
But also, he's no stranger to digital de-aging. So
also true.
Well, that recently through the Terminator movies.
Yeah.
But the problem was that nobody was sure how to do the combination of things, which is the cloning and the de-aging. Like how do you get Harrison Ford to fight off a younger version of Harrison Ford? Do you hire a double? Do you use makeup? This is again 1997, so you're still thinking about early nascent technology in terms of CGI, and there were tests done all over the place for every one of these filmmakers. But nobody could kind of crack this thing. And then Skydance Pictures bought the other thing is the script has basically got sold from studio to studio, everyone else trying to take a crack at it. Famously, there's an article, I think, in The Hollywood Reporter this week about Darren Lemke, the person who originally wrote this entire treatment, who went to the screening of Gemini Man. He was like, I haven't seen this film, I haven't touched this film for like 15 years now. Like he was attached early on and wrote some drafts.
What did he think?
Well, he doesn't say what he thinks about it, but he's like, look, he's had no involvement in this. He's credited as a screenwriter now, but he's had no involvement in this. The writers, credited screenwriters now include Billy Ray, who's a fantastic writer, and your boy David Benioff from Game of Thrones.
Oh wow.
So like this is
your boy.
It's your boy David Benioff. It didn't. Who's the other DVD?
It's D&D. That's all I know.
Who's the other D? I forget the other D.
There's throwing some D's on it.
DB Weiss? Is that it?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, no, something like that. So this script has been floating around for the longest period of time, famously unmade. Ang Lee kind of jumps onto it. And I get the impression, I think this might be this is entirely hypothetical, but I think, like the question was asked, I want to do something, Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk was not a success. It was an interesting attempt at using this technology, but it was used specifically for a drama.
Sure.
And the question was asked, what is an action film we could throw this technology at? And, and then again, this script has been floating around as like one of these great unmade films. And, it was like, hey, this might be the time for Gemini Man to kind of, like make its way through. I'm interested to see what happened between the 1997 version and this version. Lemke himself says, it doesn't really quite resemble what was there, but obviously the pitch is still the same.
Well, it's from a story perspective, it's funny because at the same time, concept-wise, treats cloning as like the craziest sci-fi thing, which maybe in 1997, like in cinema, it was. By now, no.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, it downplays any philosophical musings of cloning. Maybe because they cut them out because people didn't think like that would be a draw at all anymore because it's so benign. But at the same time, if you're these characters in this world, you really have to think about it from their point of view and not the audience's sort of like, we know what clones are, it's not that special anymore. Like there was zero reverence for the fact like that, like after a initial shocked face from both Henry and Junior, no one gave a shit that there were clones. Junior, when he confronts Clive Owen's daddy character, isn't like, how dare you make a clone? How dare me be a clone or whatever? He's like, you lied to me. Like, more about, it felt like a parentage thing, right? Like, it didn't feel like cloning mattered at all.
I'm also curious at like what Clay Verris's Clive Owen's character's plan was, because he was like did he not think that Junior would look at Henry and go, "Hey, that's weird"? Like he didn't tell him before he went in.
That's so true.
He didn't like tell him, "Oh, by the way, you're gonna go kill this guy who looks just like you."
And
Pay no mind to it.
Pay no mind. Just ignore.
It's weird, but honestly,
You should have come
just
in.
kill him. Yeah.
It would have been amazing if he came into the room and was like half joking. "Oh my God, you're gonna have to see this dude I've got to kill. He looks just like you." But don't worry.
this is the thing. That's another interesting moment that I can give you a $5 script revision and make it actually work, which is if he was trying to prove that his clone system worked or whatever, it would be, yeah, let's see if the younger clone can take out the older clone. And I don't even remember them hinting at it so much as me kind of wanting that to be a bit of it. Like, you're right, Shahir. They don't mention why he sends him other than, like, you think it might be because he wants to see it, or like you logically put yourself in that position. There's a moment after he finds out that he is the clone when Clive Owen tries to convince him, unsuccessfully without showing the turn, that he's your darkness, Junior. You have to get it. Like, but they never say like why he's the darkness.
Yeah. They tipped like there's this funny thing with this film, which is that the hook is front and center in the trailer, the hook is front and center in the poster, the hook is front and center in the title, and yet the characters don't figure it out for like a solid hour. and like even though they've interacted with each other, they're like wow, that guy just he knew all my moves. What was up with that? He looked just like me. And they're like, someone actually has to go and physically do a DNA test well, not off camera, but like we see it.
Camera.
And for them to actually be convinced about this whole thing. And then they're like, cloning, huh?
And then they don't care. They don't worry about the philosophical aspects of it. Does Junior have a soul? Does that make him a more effective killer one way or the other? Like, there's a ton of different...
Plus, their ideas about nature versus nurture are really weird. Like, Will Smith seems to like think, well, he's my clone, therefore I know exactly what he's been through, which is like, no, that's not... Because at one point he says, oh, I bet you at 19 he taught you how to kill rabbits or something. I was like, how would you know that?
Oh, well, I thought, okay, and maybe this is... Yeah, you're 100% right. You just poked another hole. I thought it was that, like, Clive Owen helped raise...
No, because Clive Owen is the same age as Will Smith.
Yeah.
It was like,
they must have trained together. Oh yeah,
because he's
he trained him in the same way, but he shouldn't know the year.
No, but also like Will Smith had his own upbringing. Like he was, like his dad abandoned him. He was raised by his mother, so he has an entirely different upbringing to Junior. But he seems to have like all these presumptions about how Junior was raised. It was like, I bet you started you hunting on deer, and then at the age of 19 got you into rabbits, right?
So it's the age thing that bugs me. It's lines like that in the script that feel like
but
either
like,
leftovers.
How would he know any of this?
Because he did train under Vargas or whatever the heck that company was. He did.
He trained with him.
Yeah, but he almost drowned him. That's the whole thing, which they get away from that. I have a good thing to say. I'm so sorry. The drowning scene, the transition between the drowning and the raising and when he swims and all that jazz, which they kind of dropped the drowning thing halfway through as well.
Who was the person drowning Will Smith's character, though?
It was supposed to be his dad.
It was his dad,
and then
right?
his mom.
Yeah, so it wasn't Will
helped him
Smith
out.
drowning him.
No, I know that. I thought it was Vargas maybe training him and then doing whatever, but then, yeah, you're right. But anyway, that shot of that transition between with the ripples of the water and the 120 frames, fucking that looked gorgeous.
Great.
I mean, water looks great in 120 frames, right? Like, it's crystal clear.
Yeah.
It's like, and especially if you went to film in, like, Barbados or they were filmed in Cartagena or, Atlanta. This is Georgia, right?
Yeah.
So water looks great there. I mean, if you went to, like, the Maldives or something like that and filmed water, you got a movie in your hands.
Sure. Yeah.
Or at least a really nice travel video.
Yeah, there we go. That's like what Will said before.
Travel video.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I'm not going to convince anyone that this is a worthwhile movie to see. I did kind of like, I think for me, the only thing I will say in terms of like net positives here, and we're talking very like net positives over gross negatives, which were like a couple of things. Surprisingly, I thought the film was committed to one central idea about the relationship between Junior and Henry.
What was that?
The idea of fatherhood and what fatherhood means. And like Clive Owen's character, basically is the villain father in this scenario. The sort of villain foster father, and Henry comes in as sort of like almost like a biological father. And I was like, it reminded me that Ang Lee does come from a background of like human drama, particularly familial drama. Like he does know how to do that stuff. Second thing was, I surprisingly the first action sequence that really showcased what 120 frames is good for, which was the motorcycle chase
Yeah.
in Cartagena. I was like, you know what? I don't love this, but I can see what's happening, and I can see what the thinking was that got this to screen.
Looked nice.
It looked nice. It felt visceral. I was kind of in it. And I, like just from a sort of purely outside point of view, I kind of liked that, it felt like I was going to see something special. There was like a quality to like paying, probably just me trying to like
Justify the $28.
Eviscerate my buyer's remorse by like going, well, at least for $30, I'm going to see something that I definitely cannot see at home.
I could have bought like 3 or 4 games on Steam with that money, and I'm still.
No, I liked that I was like turning up. The seats were really nice. Like like everything felt very.
You are selling yourself hard.
Yeah,
the seats were really nice.
Yeah.
I mean, the theater experience is so important, I think. So when there's just additives to it, extra things like the seats being really nice, the recliners, the everything else, I like the idea, like, let's try something new for a different, hopefully more fun theater experience.
Yeah. I was like, I was there for that, but there's no way I'm going to try and convince anybody that this is a worthwhile movie. I will say this. I didn't think it was an absolutely terrible experience.
It was not.
It was kind of like a passable, experience in terms of like, there was a story, there was a central idea that was kind of holding this thing all together. It was ridiculous. It was ludicrous. It didn't really make a lot of sense. It's easy to poke holes in any of it, and I don't think it's very good. And I also would not recommend it to anyone.
So here's something interesting. I like a lot of films that don't make a lot of sense and that are silly and the premise is crazy, right? So what holds those films together? I was really thinking about this because the beats of this movie, you could put these in a superhero film or like anything like that, and it's all kind of the same. I'm like, so why is this movie falling flat when it has star power of 2 people, 2 actors, really 3 if you go with Benedict Wong too, like of actors that I really 4, Clive Owen, sure. Why does this movie fall flat? And it's because each character, including the mains, I can't tell you a thing about their personalities. Clive Owen is the only one with even that if you didn't know genders or the way people looked or any of that jazz, and you read these lines back and forth or you flip-flopped the thing, like, there's no discernible personality traits for any of these characters other than Clive Owen's character. They all read pretty much exactly the same. This was sad because I love Will Smith. Shahir, I know you love Will Smith. Will, do you like Will Smith?
I do like Will Smith.
But this was the literal blandest I'd ever seen Will Smith. Twice! He was in it twice! And that kind of got me a little sad. Recently, I rewatched for the exercise and pain and just sort of like, I like sort of watching terrible things from time to time. I rewatched Suicide Squad in the background. I will say, Will Smith brings something to that movie that makes his scenes stand out, oddly making the rest of the film juxtaposed even worse. But he brings a joy to a baseline shooter character in that film. And I would argue that it'd be harder to do it there than in a movie where that character was the true leading sort of star or driving force of the plot. And here, it just felt like Will Smith's Henry was bland, and then the younger version was even blander. And I was kind of hoping that like maybe younger Junior would be a little bit more of like a hot shot, like maybe like he's a bit more of like a punk sort of type guy, like who's like rebelling against, like it would
or
be
even more of the Fresh Prince.
Sure,
like you could just be more of the Fresh Prince,
Yeah,
like that's the look.
Be more Will Smith than less of this wayward assassin, which that trope too, along with clones, went out a long time ago of the assassin with the heart of gold, I need to retire, and then the government's coming out. Like, there's so much trite going on that with no discernible character traits for any of these people, it just was like, it washed over me. Again, you can't hate it because there's nothing to hate.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, for a character to exist for 23 years, and essentially not really have an outside world, like it would be nice to know a little bit more about him. And yeah, like just being a trained assassin, one of the best, if not the best. Dumb as rocks. Why was he so stupid? Like I felt like there were just some things he said and did that was just so dumb. And apparently, all he wants is a bowl of cereal. Like, or that's on his diet for assassin. Like I was like, that's weird.
I couldn't understand.
I was like,
the bowl of cereal.
was the character meant to be a bit younger originally, and then they like aged him up, but they just like kept this? I mean, like, sure, 23-year-olds like cereal, but I was just like, what a strange. I don't know.
Also, like, you've just sent this dude to kill someone like in another country, and then he comes back, and you're like, how about a bowl of cereal? I'm like, you're gonna give this dude some
that
Wheaties?
sounds
Just
good.
Lucky Charms.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was an old attempt at humor. Like, and then I tried thinking if this movie was at all like had any comic relief to it, and I had trouble finding something other than the line in the trailer when he says to him, "I came because I'm the best," and he cocks the gun. He's like, "Obviously, you are not the best." Like, that's a funny line in that context, but I remember chuckling at that in the trailer, and even though I knew it was coming, because I was just like sort of droned into this thing. I did not laugh.
You know, I was waiting for the hell no. Did we hear one?
Do we like just a straight up oh hell no?
Well, that's like a Will Smith staple and everything. Like a very loud oh hell no. Like I feel like that's one of his things, and like
it's in Suicide
everything.
Squad.
Is it?
It's in iRobot. It's in like the Men in Blacks. Like I was waiting for it, but
isn't that a trope as well of like black characters in any movie now though as well?
Gosh,
like,
yeah, you're right.
Like
it might be just
scary
like a
movie,
trope.
Like Scary Movie kind of makes a joke about it or something. Like
But
no,
Will Smith,
it
Will
was
Smith.
what was
It was
the high
like
school
his
movie
coin,
with
yeah.
Chris Evans? Where
Not another teen movie.
Yeah, not another teen movie where like a character walks in and just like says,
Oh,
hell no.
the black token character.
Black token
Right,
character
right,
walks in
yeah.
and says, oh hell no.
Yeah, he would just he was like, I have to say my line now,
Yeah.
like my quip, like
Yeah.
my joke. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But no, I really like but I was thinking maybe Benedict Wong. He was kind of there to serve a little bit of jokey humor. He came in with like the funnies sometimes
they
because he
weren't
was like an
funny.
eccentric, like I'm a goofy guy, like right. But he wouldn't really make jokes. But
I liked when he was feeding his toucan or whatever.
He was smoking cigars next to his toucan.
Yeah.
So I was like, not good for the toucan.
Yeah, that's true.
But then the other thing was like Benedict Wong kind of felt like there was a thing where like all of these guys were like former Marines or some sort of military guys that all served in Kuwait and Afghanistan and Pakistan and Syria and all these places, and they had definitely all aged like like they were all like belly guts and stuff except for Will Smith.
Yep.
It was
well,
like
he was still working up until before. The rest of them seemed like they were
Well, no,
retired.
they were all working. Like one of them.
They weren't working.
the
One
guy-
owned a piloting company. The other guy was screwing someone against his wife's will on a boat.
but he was still a mercenary of some kind.
No, he was like a spy clandestine.
Yeah. So there was,
bullshit.
but like for some reason, Will Smith was kind of like still svelte.
because it was his last
True.
job. It was his last confirmed kill.
So he
that
was just
then,
gonna-
give him 1 year,
Give
he would
him
look
one-
just like those guys.
yeah.
It is a strange choice. Like I get the idea. You want to have Will Smith. Like like Ang Lee said something along the lines. The only other actor that Ang Lee talks about Will Smith in this movie in a really interesting way, which is that he says, oh, like Will Smith wasn't that bad an actor when he was young. He says it in those, and he couches it in that sort of term, and you're like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
And then he says like, and we really just we needed a movie star to sell this, and it's like he talks about him in that sort of like we need a big personality here, but then it's weird because the film kind of like dampens all of that down.
Yep.
And the thing that I was sort of curious that it would be really interesting. Basically, you get to time travel with Will Smith, with two characters on screen. Metaphorically time travel, and you get to see like what does the younger version of this character look like? Is he different? But he's exactly the same. It's
But
really
blander.
But yeah, it's really strange.
I totally 100% see the like of all the other actors you mentioned who were once attached to it. Out of all those other actors, Will Smith, it makes so much sense for him to do this because we also know what his younger self looks like because
We grew up with him.
We grew up with him.
Yeah.
So I think as for like a studio pick, like yes, Will Smith, because the audience already knows they like young Will Smith. So it's like you were kind of banking on the appeal of current Will Smith and 90s Will Smith, which. Right, like if we like,
But it's a switcheroo.
it's a switcheroo. But if we were getting like young Sean Connery, like we're we're getting Bond.
You're getting James Bond.
But I was thinking Nicolas Cage. There's very many different young Nicolas Cages. What would that have looked like?
Clint
We'll
Eastwood's
never
another
know.
good example because we know what Clint Eastwood was like. The weird. This is my thing, and it was just an impression I got. Will Smith has not aged very much. Like, I stood next to the man. He's 51 years old. He looks 30 years younger than me. He looks
good.
really young.
He's doing good.
He looks younger and better and fitter than I ever will in my 20s. And it was like, and
When you finally turn 20.
when I finally turned 20, yeah. And I was like, it's such a strange choice. You got to age him up for this role to, really make sense. But they play him as 51. And
then Junior on the flip side of it, like, so from a marketing standpoint, Will, I guarantee you people in a meeting room somewhere were like, oh yes, this is perfect, 100%, because that's true. Everyone loves young Will Smith. This will totally do. But I kind of think, weirdly, when not treated in a cameo situation, and even then, like when Carrie Fisher showed up at the end of Rogue One, or quote, hard air quotes, Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia, showed up at the end there, people got a little bit miffed or weirded out, which I didn't mind it too much because it was like a bit of a cameo. Same with Grand Moff Tarkin, the guy who played him in that movie. I guess he was more of a character, but here...
He was in that film.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
But here, man...
Well, yeah. Look, I got
like you have young Will Smith, but you have something that looks pretty close, nearing the edge of the uncanny valley. Young Will Smith, and you don't have him remotely act young or like young Will Smith. Maybe it could be young as in like a homeschooled sort of like, or like, no, I shouldn't even say homeschooled, just someone who is very like an introverted kind of shy assassin.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very bizarre sort of set of parameters that this character, because he's not even sort of he doesn't even seem to be that great an assassin. He's physically faster and stronger than
he shot a grenade back at Will Smith,
but he can't seem to like he pops his head out like in front of an assassin who can shoot a person in a moving train, and it's only by chance that he doesn't get killed.
You know what? You're very correct. They tell us a lot how good all of these people are, and we only see maybe very few times like that they're actually good, in conjunction with them being incredibly stupid.
I think the movie, there's a couple of things that I was thinking about with this as well, which is that one, there's no marvel to and I mean marvel in terms of like the awe-inspiring factor to the de-aging. Like, you don't look at it and go, wow, look at that, it's young Will Smith. You look at it and you go, I can kind of see the seams of where this thing is being stitched together.
I guess it's you did it.
I guess so. And I was thinking about two films that like really came to mind. One was I don't know if anyone's seen this, but Peter Jackson's film Bad Taste.
Forever ago.
Yeah, there's a sequence in Bad Taste where Peter Jackson, this is like his first movie, and he, famously, he kind of filmed it over the course of 4.5 years or something like that, and he ran out of money so many times and actors dropped out. And there's a sequence where he filmed the first half when he started the movie, and he plays one of the characters, and then he needed that character to like fall off a cliff, and so he has a fight sequence with another, it's a zombie alien or something like, it's an alien, but he plays the other alien. So it's Peter Jackson like a year later fighting the younger Peter Jackson, and it's completely seamless, and you're kind of always surprised at like the level of interactivity that he sort of manages to weave in. And this is, again, pre any digital technology, so he's just cutting it together really fast and quickly, and you kind of like get that sense, and it's like, it's kind of awe-inspiring when you watch it, and you sort of think about like I thought a lot about the David Cronenberg film Dead Ringers, where I've gone blank on the actor's name, but very famous actor. He played Alfred in the Batman v Superman. Why have I gone blank on his name?
I don't know.
Jeremy Irons, yeah. Where Jeremy Irons is basically playing two twins, and it's like, it's miraculous when you watch it, because he's like on screen interacting with himself, and you're kind of like, oh my god, how did they do this? There's none of that sort of sense of how did they do this with this film,
right.
Like there's no sort of like, oh my god, like all it is like, yeah, I guess you threw a lot of money at this.
Yeah, no, exactly. I just checked Twitter,
Okay.
I did before the show. I posted on Twitter just as a little experiment to see if we could get some last-minute hot takes from people about Gemini Man who've seen it, and a couple have come in. So we can talk through these. Two of them are kind of short, and then one is a little bit longer. So here we go. Taurus Man says, I honestly could not finish the movie. The dialogue was way too bad, and hope you guys can find some redeeming value out of that movie. Let's take that for a second. I agree, but we've been poo-pooing a little bit. Let's try to, like we said, some things we liked. The motorcycle chase scene felt pretty cool. When the moments where the disparity of basically when you stayed on a shot long enough that was the proper length, it felt realistic.
When the convenience store is being shot up and Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Will Smith are on the ground crawling, since it was so clear, you could see the actors, you could feel that they were in danger because you could see the whole scope of it. Everything was going crazy.
Sure. Yep.
That looked great.
Yep, that's true. Shahir, anything else?
This is more of a sort of looking at the body of Ang Lee's work.
Uh-huh.
And I would say he's made 2 films right now about like soldiers suffering from PTSD. And the question marks around soldiers suffering from PTSD and what should we do about that? And I think it's interesting that this has been his preoccupation with this technology. And I think that's an interesting idea.
Well, I don't think this movie remotely deals with PTSD.
The question that Clive Owen asks is, should we be sending real people into harm's way? And the whole thing, and
to
the whole,
avoid it.
yeah,
Ooh,
and the whole thing he's talking about there is like, what if we could send not real people into, and for that moment, I was like, maybe Clive Owen's onto something here. Maybe his character's onto something.
Well, yeah, if the movie ever delved into that beyond
it
the
doesn't
line.
really, but it is like between this and Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, and I think if you're looking at it from the point of view that the visual quality is supposed to kind of give you this sense of overwhelming clarity, I think that's an interesting.
That's really interesting.
That sounds,
I like that. The villain's thesis is actually a really good thesis. I wish we could have explored that.
It's what probably got Ang Lee interested in the film in general to use.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's an interesting idea, and like the thing that I was like kind of what made the film not a terrible movie for me was like watching it going, you know, he's playing around with something sort of here, and the film in no way executes this idea very well or does anything with it, and I don't think Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk did either. But it's sort of like it's an interesting milieu, and if you think about Ang Lee as a filmmaker, he's a filmmaker that kind of like has made a lot of varied films. You know, like the variety of films is so wide,
so diverse. Yeah,
but
his resume.
he tends to think about people dealing with trauma in some way, and I think it was sort of clear and evident in this film.
There was a sentence about it, and I wish it went to it further. I like that take on it. I really think that would be, if they explored that, and it was a bit more of a basis, and you got into a bit sort of like I mentioned before, like, okay, if we're not going to send real people, then are clones real people?
And that would be
great.
Yeah.
So thank you, Tursman. Next up, the Twitter handle. I like this one. Here we go. Twatty McTwatface.
Good.
Fun.
Says.
Is that the name of the boat? That should have been the name of the boat.
It should have been the name of the boat that Will Smith visits and then gets his friend killed. Didn't like it. Plot was weak and the dialogue was bad. So, all right, still on board with what we're sort of saying.
What's funny is I don't think we can blame Darren Lemke for the dialogue because this is like this. You know, there's a lot of big writers attached to this at this point.
Which is silly.
You know, like it should have had many revisions in terms of the dialogue.
We walked out when we were walking out of the theater. We were talking.
Exactly what you're gonna say.
And I have a bit of a thing I call the 2 week. The 2 week paradox. When you're dumping so much money into a movie, into this thing that's going to take months to years to create, and that you're trying to really like get out there for people to see, you're dumping money into it. Can you not take 2 weeks and just make sure your script is tight? Now, look, that's simplifying a script writing process, and I'm not saying that you could fix every problem in a script in 2 weeks, but this script, we're all writers here. If we had nothing to do and we were paid for 2 weeks, we could make this script easily 50% better. I am confident that any of us alone could do that. And that's not saying a ton. I'm just, you know.
The only thing I would argue is that there's a thing that happens on big films like this, which is that it tends to feel like there is a train and all you can do is like lay the tracks out and hope it doesn't crash. So there's probably, like in terms of like the parameters of like how to do a rewrite in this film, you might get something, because one of the things about this film that I was like, what? Was like, why did they go to Cartagena? Why did they go to Budapest? Like, there's no real reason for it. They're just like, oh, let's just go here.
They need talking shots on a G6.
And then we'll go back here, and then we'll go here. There's like no real parameters to it, like that make sense narrative-wise. And so when I watch that, I go, must be really hard to come into this thing. Basically, like if you're David Benioff, they're throwing a lot of money at you to like have David Benioff on this thing. And like his parameters probably are, you've got a week, we've got to punch this thing up. Character has to go to Budapest and have a motorcycle chase. What can you give me? And basically all you can do is like write some pages, because you'll be like, well, I can't like stop the whole movie and have them visit something else.
But I'm not talking about like redoing plot points. I'm honestly, seriously, just considering dialogue punch-ups. It's baffling to me. It's baffling but again, it's because, and we've all worked in television too, so we know that this, like, obviously this happens everywhere. Right. But like, how do people not see? Just take a little bit more time. You've dumped so much money, so many people's hours, blood, sweat, and tears, so much. You don't want to make sure that the foundation of this thing is remotely enjoyable.
There was one moment of the movie I thought we were going to get this certain twist, but it never happened, because the guy that Will Smith was working with, that was in the beginning.
Yeah, that guy, the young actor. Yeah.
There's
handler.
Things, the guy who was on the lookout, whatever. Like, there's things that that aren't said that you're like, why didn't they say that? But there's things that are said in scripts that you're like, okay, why was that added in there? Should this come back later? When he has the off-camera shooting death, I was like, oh, here we go. This is very PG-13. I can tell right now. He filmed it, and he goes, like, there was a whole scene where he's like, delete that. I was like, is this a shot of humor, or is this going to come back later? That guy gets shot off camera. We hear it on the phone. We don't see it. And I'm like, that's suspicious. And then later, Benedict Wong is talking about how he saw Will Smith's being attacked outside his house. And he goes, how did you see that? And I'm like, oh, is that guy still alive filming things? And then it was never discussed again.
Sure.
So I'm like, oh, red herring? I don't think the script was that smart to put in a red herring. But also, like, another written thing that was a huge reveal was the third Will Smith.
Will Smith the third.
That, did you hear in the theater an audible gasp from the audience? And I'm like, who else would? Like, that's not clever. It would have been more of a gasp if it was a Clive Owen clone.
The only reason I gasped was that I was like, oh, this is obviously Clive Owen, because they would never be silly enough to put another Will Smith.
And to like make us think it could be anybody else. It was like, what if even was another Mary Elizabeth Winstead?
Oh, that would have been great.
That'd have been
like young Benedict Wong.
Yeah, young Benedict Wong. It's like, that would have been a big gasp. But an audible gasp for another Will Smith who was better than Junior. And also,
he's not that good, because he clearly gets bested.
He just didn't feel pain. And also, there's moments where he's getting shot in the chest with a grenade launcher, and you're like, no, just because you don't feel pain doesn't mean that you won't blow up. I was hoping that person, and I was hoping this would happen eventually with those like super armored soldiers, even though they set them up to be like regular people or like whatever beforehand. I was hoping that it was his whole platoon young. Like his whole
Will Smith,
Benedict Wong, the guy on the boat, like whatever the platoon was, any character that was set up as like the older generation. So I was hoping that Clive Owen was like, fine, send in the fucking crew, and then have the whole crew go at older Will Smith.
Universal soldier of the whole thing, coming like rocking
like
this whole
that
thing.
would have been dope, but it was another Will Smith.
I mean, you can I think that's a great idea, but I could also just see like someone saying, I don't know if we got the budget to clone Benedict Wong, like I don't know if we got the budget to do like
one was hard enough.
Yeah, Will Smith is hard enough. Are we really?
But if they're doing like quick action scenes, we're not doing like high emotional fucking scenes of crying and shit with. Whatever.
It's just there's no real like depth to the exploration of any of the ideas.
No, there's no depth at all. Okay, here we go. But here's some depth. This comes from Red Charison.
Oh, really?
Visual effects editor for Martin Scorsese and Sikelia Pictures, working on The Irishman, or just finishing up The Irishman.
So another de-aging specialist. Yeah.
But he's not talking about that here. Oh. He says, hot take. If you saw the HFR 3D version, you didn't see the version the rest of the world will see. So as a critic, are you obligated to see it as the director envisioned, or as the culture at large will see it and talk about it? I will take my answers off air, but we're going to give them to you on air.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we won't.
Yeah. No.
gotta.
I have a take on this, but
Go. You first. You first.
I think you're obligated to see how the director intended it, because how it can be seen by anyone could be varied entirely. Someone could watch this movie on their iPhone. Someone could watch this on YouTube. Someone could watch this projected in a room, like through a window somewhere else. And it's unfair to kind of speculate on how the film could be perceived without knowing exactly how it could be seen. This movie could be seen a million ways. I think it's an interesting conversation point around the 120 frames look. And the thing that I think is fascinating is we are all, slightly older, and we have an ingrained sense of what cinema should look like, what movies look like. But there's a younger generation, that didn't grow up, that their primary mode of ingesting media is 240 hertz on a computer monitor. They're ingesting video games, they're watching YouTube, and so maybe for them this 120 frames is actually closer in line with how they consume media in general. And it's an entirely plausible rationale to see like an entirely different audience view this in a different way. I think to Red's point, you should go out of your way to see how the director intended it to be seen, because that's the only reference point.
As a reviewer or as a general audience member?
Well, as a reviewer, you're gonna, as a general audience member, you're gonna see it however you see it, right?
Sure, but let's.
As a reviewer, if you're trying to recommend it to other people or to have a point of conversation about it, I think it's worth seeing it in the way that it was intended to be presented.
I think I agree with you mostly, but I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit and say, while I do agree with that, there's also a level of knowledge and/or respect is the wrong word, but let's stick with knowledge. Knowledge of how your audience will be able to see your film. And also, from a reviewer standpoint, there could be said, just like you said, we're obligated to sort of see as the director intended. But if we know for a fact, like only 14 theaters in the country saw the movie the way that we saw it, if we know for a fact that literally everyone we're talking to right now will have probably seen the 24-frame 3D version, most likely, of this film, are we then obligated to talk about that more than the director's intent? Because it's still about, it depends on, I guess, our goal. Like if we're talking about this in a vacuum, about the content that a person helmed,
yeah,
then I agree with Shahir. If we're talking about it in the sense of letting people know the pros and cons of a thing that they can actually most likely see, I might go the other way.
And it's a shame then that the studio didn't make it more accessible than 14 theaters that were showing this. I was reading like a box office report on it, and it underperformed. And I think that really, the studio shot itself in the foot by not releasing, more than 14 theaters worth of these kinds of screenings, because that is such a huge draw to bring people in for this movie. I mean, myself included. I don't know if I was really interested in seeing it as is.
Yeah.
Here's one thing I would say about the reason I'm completely unconvinced about HFR 3D in general is that I've seen 3 films in HFR at this point, in HFR 3D, and in all 3 cases, I would say seeing it in 24 frames without 3D would improve the experience.
Yeah.
Like, without a doubt, would be better. But then the only counterpoint to that is that am I thinking about this technology in a sort of slightly narrow-minded way? Because think about this. When color projection came in, not every screen would have the color version of a film. In fact, they would have duplicate prints of black and white and color.
Yep.
And there was only, you can maybe think of maybe The Wizard of Oz, where when they go into Oz, Oz is suddenly in color. And if the audience that got the black and white only print of that, wherever that was screening, had that experience, you really are missing out on a significant portion of how the visual quality of the film, or the visual presentation of the film, affects the way it's being seen. And I think, like they did the same thing with sound as well. When sound film was initially introduced, not every theater had it, and some theaters would have to like play, in different technologies. So not everyone would get the exact same experience. My thing with 120 frames 3D at this point, or HFR, is that I don't think I've seen an example of it where the HFR is really being key to understanding how the film operates on an emotional, thematic, even just the delivery of what it's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, and I actually think that of 3D most of the time as well.
I agree.
There's only one film I can kind of think of off the top of my head where I was like, oh, 3D's kind of adding.
Which one?
Avatar.
Oh, interesting. I see. I didn't think it affected because Avatar, the entire film was 3D. The
3D there's more depth.
There's more depth once they're in it, but the entire film is 3D. Something that I really appreciated, and I brought it up here multiple times, is Tron Legacy.
Right.
Tron Legacy is 100% 2D until they go into Tron.
Yeah.
And then it's 3D, and that means it is a thematic element.
For me, it's Gravity or space movies in general.
Gravity
I
is a
think
good
in,
one,
in
yeah.
3D, the scope, you feel it.
Yeah. But in general, like to be honest, I'm not a diehard 3D person.
No, same.
I actually loathe it
Yeah,
entirely. Actually, I was having trouble with my glasses. I felt like I was getting the light from the projector room
glaring against
like on the other side of my left side of the glasses. I don't know if you saw, I was like trying to cover it up.
I did see that, yeah.
I was getting like a weird glare, and it felt a little glassy. Yeah. You shouldn't have to like wear glasses to like, well, I'm sorry. I mean, an extra piece of something to see.
Yeah,
the
because
film,
like for me, I have glasses,
Glasses on
so I'm doing glasses on glasses. Which
glass
is
on
always,
glass on glass?
glass on glass on glass on glass.
Yeah.
Which is always just like, it feels awkward. I mean, generally, I tend to forget about it.
I thought you were going to say generally you feel awkward.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I feel awkward all the time. But I haven't seen a compelling case. And the thing is like, it's Peter Jackson, Ang Lee, and James Cameron, and then this other film, Aquarelle. James Cameron hasn't produced whatever he's going to produce with this yet, but I haven't seen a compelling reason. I've watched the first two Hobbits films in high frame rate, and in both cases I was like, I think this would be a better movie experience without it.
Yeah.
And I think I want in Gemini Man, however, I think there was something unique to the way the fight sequences were choreographed, but only the fight sequences. Like nothing else in the film kind of needed this HFR thing. Nothing.
I don't think any of the fight sequences needed this HFR thing. Which one were you thinking of?
Like the motorcycle chase.
Well, sorry, the chase scene. Yes,
Yeah,
the fight scenes.
The motorcycle fight scene is what I'm.
Well,
calling.
like I'm saying the chase scene ends when they sort of like get to the car and they're sort of fighting around the car. Like that was neat, but HFR didn't particularly helped that in my opinion. And when they got into like the catacombs and they started fighting in all of the dark places, it was so close up and so just like shaky cam 9000.
Exactly,
I was
yeah.
like, all right.
I didn't mind the final sequence inside the hardware store, which I was like, part of me was just like, hardware store. Is this where we're gonna do
we're
this?
gonna end it.
Yeah, we're
right
gonna do it
here.
in a hardware store.
Final act.
But like when you saw like the new clone before you knew what it was, kind of do like this single take jump off a building and up into another in a single kind of camera move.
It's like cutscene intro. Right?
Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, it felt very Metal
That's
Gear
how
Solid.
you introduce an Overwatch villain in a cutscene. Yeah.
I was like, okay, and the actual fight between older Will Smith and parkour Will Smith was kind of like, okay, yeah. I think there was I was finally seeing a glimmer of something to this, but it's not the thing I really want, which is like a I want the Tron sort of experience. I want the Wizard of Oz sort of experience where it's like, this movie only exists if you see it in the full presentation. This movie, like the whole thing only comes together because of the presentation.
I wouldn't mind seeing this technology because we saw that one scene where he's drowning. Just a movie that takes place entirely underwater. So
That's Aquarella, the documentary.
it is.
It's a documentary about water.
Oh, so I mean, and from a narrative, like if there's a narrative, if we want to. No, I mean, like in the future, like if we wanted, I'd like to see.
Let's make the Meg in 120 frames.
Aquaman 2.
Aquaman
120.
2. Yep.
Let's
James
make that
Wan, if
movie.
you're still attached, I just want you to know that
I'm sure
balls in your court.
I'm sure someone has approached, like the thing is
Little Mermaid's coming up. I don't know if you guys have
Titanic
started seeing
2.
yet.
this is not a technology that's being like pioneered from the ground up, like like from individual operators or anything like that. Like streaming content was kind of pioneered by people on the internet trying to find ways to stream, like to make compression better. But 3D and high frame rate, these are all coming from studios with a lot of money who are trying to like push this technology and like to give us an incentive to go to the movie. So I'm sure James Wan has probably had conversations about would this look good better in HFR,
Sure.
and he's probably hopefully knows enough.
As long as we
I
don't
think
make
yeah.
to be fair, I
Maybe he'll do a Fast and Furious one like this.
in HFR.
as long as
Yeah.
it's not in 40x, I'm fine. Well, I mean, I guess sort of we kind of covered final thoughts. Does anyone else have any last minute things on Gemini Man?
Will, you should go first.
Yeah, it's just a bummer. Yeah.
I mean, that pretty
Final
much covers
thoughts.
it.
Just a bummer.
Just a lot of really good, like the bones, the structure, a lot of good introduction of themes and elements and conversations that just ended up not happening. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
She
unfortunate.
here?
Yeah, no, I didn't hate my time at the movies. I didn't like, it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. I just didn't think it really went anywhere. And then, like, there's so much potential, like you said, like there's so much money being thrown around, like it would be amazing if this film had the commitment of the big ideas. It had the commitment of the little ideas.
Yeah.
And the problem is, I think the idea that was really latched onto was the visual presentation, but it wasn't backed by a narrative idea that made that make sense.
Yeah.
And in a way, I think Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk was a more interesting proposition because it's such a unwieldy piece of technology for a drama, for like a really intimate, like little chamber piece. So I was seeing some interesting things with the 120 frames per second. I was kind of like, maybe there's something in this, but it's not in this. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. I'm there too. This is a okay movie, but surrounded with gimmicks. Some of them work, not really. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't suggest going to see it even in 120 unless you're really, really curious about the technology and to sort of see it for yourself, because it is interesting, and I like trying to figure out the behind the scenes sort of functioning of it and whatnot. But also, it's $28, at least in the city. I don't know what it is in some of the other theaters, but I imagine the price point is still pretty high.
And I think you only need to see one scene to decide whether you like it or not.
And the sad part is you have to pay the money so you can see the scene.
The sad part, it doesn't come in the first quarter of the movie or the first third of the movie. You got to wait for it to get there. But.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been the only podcast about the film Gemini Man. Will.
What are you, brother?
Yes.
Are you Gemini? Taurus?
Yeah, well, we didn't-
Pisces? You
I'm a
Scorpio?
Taurus.
Oh, we're all
actually.
You're Taurus Bros.
We're a Taurus trio.
Oh, we're a
What's
Taurus
up?
trio. Yay.
Sorry, everybody.
Yeah.
Well, where can folks find you, number one of three Taurus trio, Will Tempfer?
You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram at WTempfer, TEMPFER. And also make sure to check out Next Big Dance Move on the Wild and Out's YouTube page.
That is right.
You have a movie as well coming out, right? Or
I have a short film that's in limbo right now. We cut it too long, and we're cutting it shorter, trying to shave 10 minutes off of something that's 25 minutes. So it's a little
A battle.
difficult. Yes, but hey,
That's
you
a
know.
fascinating conversation to have around short films with how long is too long in a short film? Because you're like, it's done.
Festival circuits are like, it can be up to like 40 minutes, but really they're not going to
Play.
pick you if you're because they want to pair as many as possible
But
together
the thing
for a
is, the
screening.
best short films, the ones that like win the Oscars, are like 25, 30 minutes, and they're amazing.
Yeah.
And you're sort of like, well, hang on, that's kind of what you want to see. But for some
But
reason,
It's,
every short
like I said, it's gonna be real good if it's gonna be 25 minutes. We were making a real big case for ourselves presenting a 25-minute short film to people, but yeah.
Also, I have to double down. Please check out Will's Instagram that he listed because it is hilarious. I enjoy it very much. It is a point in my internet day I look forward to.
my
Shahir,
stories.
Yeah, it is your stories. It's all your stories. Shahir, When you are not being parent trapped by me, putting you and Will Tempfer in the same place to prove that you are not, in fact, the same person, where can folks find you?
Well, I have to say it actually worked, and I now believe that I need to go back to Will's place, and Will needs to come back to my place, and we're gonna do the old switcheroo, like the Freaky Friday right now, right?
We'll swap and see if anybody in our lives notice.
Yeah, I would love my son to wake up and like look at you and be like,
It's me.
What is going on here? You can find me playing the old switcheroo at my website, www.shahirdaud.com. That's SHAHIRDAUD. Matt, when you are not being stubborn as a bull, where can people find you?
Oh, you can find me breaking up all the china in the shop at MATTHEWKROL.com for my life and works. Also, Skeletor, the number 4, PREZ on Instagram and PSN, or Emperor MSK on Twitter. Also, please check out the good works we are doing over at Extra Credits. I believe when this episode airs, let me turn around and see the old thing. Ooh, we're going to be having an episode on level scaling coming out, which will be really fun. And also our Anchor Watt series on our Extra History channel is a GD delight. And with that, we will talk to you all next week when we cover the film blah, 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 blah. We don't know what film it is. It doesn't matter yet. You're going to find out then.
Oh, it would have been a real play on words if there was a film coming out called blah, blah, blah.
I mean, we could look it up.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
I'll write it.
Yeah,
Right.
we'll get on this and then we can do it up. Anyway,
write it.
thanks everyone for listening. And write us in onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or Twitter, onlymoviepod. Thank you, everyone who wrote in your last-minute tweets to us. That was very fun. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, bye.